Good morning. My name is Corey Haskell, and I'm the Vice President of the University of Southern Maine Foundation, and I am very excited to welcome you today to the USM Women in Leadership event, Risky Business, Finding the Risk Taker Within. And with any luck, this will be our final, fingers crossed, virtual Women in Leadership event, and very soon we'll be able to all be together in person again, which is what I prefer for this really amazing event. So for the next hour or so, we're going to talk about risks, large and small. And we're going to hear from some incredible risk takers, including maybe you. First, we're going to sit down with our two phenomenal panelists, Emily Kane and Josephine Carandula. Each of them are going to take us through their journeys of risk. And then we're going to break up into smaller groups and continue the conversation with you joining in if you dare, or maybe if you just feel inspired. So as you know, no USM women's event is complete without a participant raffle. So let's get started. I feel like this whole free raffle door prize things comes from my days being a little kid going to Tupperware parties where we were all high-fiving when we got the free awesome Tupperware piece. But I'd like to ask my team to pull 3 random attendee names for me. And I will read them off one at a time. And my colleague Blair Schneider, who sometimes doubles as Champ the Husky, is going to show us the USM swag prizes. So the first prize today that we're going to be pulling a name for is USM logo winter hat and a scarf. So let me pull the first winner. That is Selena Craig. Congratulations, Selena Craig. You have got the USM winter hat and winter scarf. You're going to need it very soon. Now we're going to go on to door prize number 2. We've got a USM logoed water bottle and, of course, a stuffed Champ the Husky. Awesome. All right. And it looks like our next winner is Ariana Whiting. Ariana Whiting, congratulations. You get the water bottle and the cutest stuffed animal around, Champ the Husky. And now we've got our third door prize for now, the USM stainless steel cup. You guys, I'm just going to say that I put wine in here, and it is a fabulous little tumbler. So I've called it a coffee mug, but hey, there's no shame if you can put whatever you want in it. So the winner is Mary Nelson. Congratulations, the Honorable Mary Nelson, and also on our Music Advisory Committee. So congratulations, and Mary, thanks for being here too. All right, oh, I see someone else zooming in from Vermont. Welcome, Elaine, so glad you're here. Okay, so now, finally, congratulations to all our winners. Stay tuned because at the end of today's event, we're going to raffle a coveted USM Husky Snuggle Pack. And if you have ever been to a USM Women in Leadership event, you know that you're going to want the Snuggle Pack. And I hear that Bangor Savings Bank also has some BSB swag that will go with the Husky Snuggle Pack. So stand by for that. We will do it after our breakout sessions. Okay, so I want to take a moment to thank Bangor Savings Bank for being our season event sponsor, and especially to rising superstar and also a USM alum from 2017 at Bangor Savings Bank. She is a relationship manager. Her name is Amberlyn Esperanza, and I just want to thank Amberlyn for being an amazing, tenacious, gritty, wonderful Husky. So Amberlyn, I'm going to hand it to you.
Thank you, Corey. Good morning, everyone. I'm Amberlyn Esperanza, and on behalf of Bangor Savings Bank, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 USM Women in Leadership event, Risky Business, Finding the Risk Taker Within. As a proud USM alumni and major Husky fan, I've always looked forward to USM's Women in Leadership events. This is a time to bring successful women together, to lift one another up and celebrate our successes. I thank USM for a solid foundation in my career as a small business relationship manager for Bangor Savings Bank. The past couple of years, I've been working with small businesses, helping them to pivot and continue to drive our communities. Discussing today's topic of women who take risks is a unique opportunity to share and encourage each other and help each other find the risk taker within. I'm excited to hear from today's panel speakers and hope to see you at our next event, the February Galentine's Day Women in Leadership event, also proudly sponsored by Bangor Savings Bank. Now, happy to turn it back over to Corey.
Thank you so much, Amberlynn, and thank you to Bangor Savings Bank. Amberlynn, we have a USM Husky sweatshirt, Women in Leadership tote, notebook, and USM mug that we're going to send you just for being beautiful you and for helping make the connection with Bangor Savings Bank. Thank you for joining us and for doing us proud at USM. I also want to do a shout out to all of the Bangor Savings Bank team members who are here today for the first time. And for a second time, we have USM mugs to thank you all for sponsoring and attending today's event. So those are coming to you via snail mail. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is to welcome my facilitator, my co-facilitator. She's going to inhabit the other end of the cozy virtual couch that we have today. Ainsley Wallace, President and CEO of the USM Foundation.
Hey, good
Ainsley.
morning.
Hi,
So
good
glad
morning.
to be here.
Thanks for being my side hustle as usual at USM Women in Leadership events.
These are my favorite events. Always love a Women in Leadership event. And I agree with Emily Kane that this is the hottest Zoom in town at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning.
I agree with you. You know, I don't know if she is here right now, but because the topic today is about taking a risk, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Idella Glenn from USM, because I was thinking about it this morning. A couple of weeks ago, Dr. Glenn facilitated a discussion with Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, who is the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. He's a prolific thinker and influencer and academic. And it must have been very overwhelming for her to think about having a conversation by Zoom with such a world leader on that topic. And I think she actually said at the beginning of the event that she was not comfortable facilitating, but she did it anyway. And I feel a little bit the same way this morning, Ainsley, because honestly, I usually do the welcome and you facilitate the panel. So thanks for pushing me to be brave and take a risk today by co-facilitating this panel with you.
Yeah, well, I think that it's a great example, Corey, about how women, you know, I get kind of tired of hearing all of the old saws about how women are risk averse, because that just doesn't hold up to my personal experience. And I think that women take risks in different ways than men, and research bears that out. Women often have different challenges societally, and more to risk in taking a risk than men do in our society. But when women take risks, just like any other humans, like that, we discover our innate capability and our innate resilience. And I know that Dr. Glenn a few weeks ago was so captured the sentiments of our community, and with Dr. Kendi, and then you're so natural as a conversationalist and as a facilitator that every time you're a great example of how every time someone steps outside of their comfort zone, that the entire world gets a little bit richer.
Well, thank you for leading the way, Mama. I am glad to be here on the other end of the virtual couch with you. So it is with great excitement that I introduce you to our two risky business panelists. First is a woman we are so proud to call our own. She is a 2021 graduate of the University of Southern Maine. Originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Josephine Kadandula is a management trainee and emerging leader at Bangor Savings Bank, as well as a program coordinator at Awika, a new nonprofit that helps empower women in domestic violence situations. We're so proud to welcome you, Josephine, to our USM Women in Leadership event today. And the second panelist or part of our conversation today is someone who I know so well, Emily Kane. She is the executive director of Emily's List, the nation's largest resource for women in politics. They did not name the organization after her, but I think she has definitely earned it. Before leading this national organization, Emily served in the Maine state legislature for a decade, both in the House and in the Senate. She was the youngest woman in Maine history to serve as the House Minority Leader. She is also my best friend, and I am so proud that she is joining us here today. So welcome, Josephine and Emily. Yay.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. We're so thrilled.
Yes,
I am so great to see all these wonderful faces and so many friends. And my mom is on too. So it is the hottest Zoom in town when Jane Kane is on this. Jane Hacker Kane is in the house. So thank you.
Excited for this. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Well, Emily, when I was thinking about this panel topic about women who've taken a risk and lived to tell their story, I could not imagine doing this event without you. You were at the back of my mind, as you often are. And I wish I was with you right now holding your hands. But I want to ask you about your experience with risk and being brave, because you're someone who's taught me how to be brave. So will you tell our Women in Leadership attendees today about a risk that you were afraid to take, but did so anyway? Like, what helped you push through your fear? And how did this impact the trajectory of your life? Tell us your story.
Corey, thank you so much. And you are my best friend, and I'm so glad to be doing this morning with you. And Ainsley, thanks for being such a wonderful leader at the USM Foundation. Samantha, thanks for your hard work putting this event together. And thank you to Bangor Savings Bank for sponsoring this important opportunity to gather virtually and eventually in person for women in the Portland area and women across Maine who are connected to USM. It's great that so many of my former colleagues and current members of the legislature are on today, and people I've worked with off and on for a long time. You already heard me shout out my mom, who is on the line, who's a very proud University of Southern Maine graduate, that I would add. And I feel very lucky to be here this morning. The topic, though, as Corey, you gave it to me, I've been doing some reflecting about risk. And maybe it's because I'm me, and maybe because I'm just a little bit nerdy enough all the time, I went to the dictionary and I looked up the definition of risk. And when you look up the definition of risk, there's a couple of entries, and it talks about, loss or injury, hazard, insurance claims, loss of value in the first definition. But the second definition has two parts. It's the verb, to risk, right? Risking. In the first it says to expose to hazard or danger. And the second it says to incur the risk or danger. And it talks about risking loss. And so I thought about the definition, and my first thought was, have I really taken any big risks? I'm not kidding. I asked myself that because I've done a lot of things that are hard. And I've certainly done things that are not typical for women or typical for women my age. But it made me think of it. Is that really a risk? Was I actually risking anything? So as I think about the part of the definition about possibility of loss, well, I've won 5 elections and I've lost 2. As you mentioned, Corey, I served for 10 years in the legislature, winning 5 elections, 4 to the House and 2 to the Senate. But then I went on to lose not one, but two spectacular campaigns for Congress here in Maine's 2nd Congressional District. And I'm joining you from my house in Orono this morning. What I will tell you after winning 5 elections and losing 2 is that winning is better. Let's just be honest. But that what I've learned in taking that risking loss, is that in loss, opportunity comes. Doors open. I've applied for big jobs and I have gotten them and I have not gotten them. But at each time, when it didn't go my way, when you could say perhaps the risk didn't pay off, it turned out it actually did. And another opportunity came along. The part of the definition about exposing oneself to hazard or danger, well, let me just say running for office is not glamorous. In fact, it is hard and it can be dangerous and a little treacherous as you travel around. And nowadays, when people are less kind and less respecting to elected officials and public officials, there is some danger involved. But as I reflect on risk, my sort of takeaway and my lesson that I hope you can think about this morning is that if you are doing things you believe in, and you know why you get out of bed in the morning to do the work that you do, then I would argue you're going to be fine. In fact, you're going to be great. That has been my experience. And when I lost my first race for Congress in 2014, I wasn't expecting to lose. In fact, I was pretty confident I would win. So were most people and the press, and I think my opponent. And so they called the race in the middle of the night. It was very sad. But I didn't have to give a big concession speech. I didn't have to go in front of a crowd and, concede. I made a phone call. I cried a little, maybe a lot, and I went to bed. But the next morning, as I woke up at a hotel in Bangor and was cleaning the hotel room, I took a shower, I went downstairs, I had breakfast with people who I've known my entire life, and I felt pretty intact. But I was still sad. And a little while later, I went to leave the hotel, and when I came down in the lobby, there was a gaggle of Maine press. And by gaggle, I mean maybe 4 reporters who were there with microphones in my face. Now, I was wearing jeans, a sweater, I had my hair in a ponytail, and they said, "Emily, you lost the election. What's next?" I didn't have any prepared statement. I hadn't written talking points. I hadn't rehearsed this answer. So I just said what was literally on my heart. I said, well, I woke up yesterday caring about the future of the state of Maine, and I woke up today caring about the same thing. So whatever I do, it'll have something to do with that. And I think that's the frame that I bring to this risk conversation, is that if you know why you're doing it and you're moving it forward, then the risk you're taking is always going to be worth it, even if it doesn't turn out the way you thought. I ran for office in 2004 at the age of 24 because I'm passionate about higher education access, success, and affordability. Here I am, many years later, still working in politics, having done amazing work in that field as a legislator. And it's because I took that risk all those years ago that I was in a position last year to say yes when Governor Janet Mills asked me to join the University of Maine System Board of Trustees, still following that same passion I had all those years ago. When I was in the legislature, thinking I would become the 100th Speaker of the House, and instead became the only Democrat and the first in my lifetime to become the minority leader in the House of Representatives. Not only did we take the majority back, but we did it by electing women, which set me up after I ran for Congress to make the case to Emily's List that even though they had never hired anybody from well outside of DC for a job like I have now, that I was the perfect choice. And here I am. So I'm not sure I've taken the kind of risk that maybe people take when they risk their families or their livelihoods. But what I will say is every risk I ever took was grounded in what I care about and the difference that I wanted to make. And so to me, that kind of risk is always worth it.
That's wonderful. And so, Josephine, it's so exciting to have you here with us because you're at a totally different stage in your life journey. You are a recently minted USM university graduate. And we always say that every USM alum and every USM student has amazing stories of tenacity and grit and endurance. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your story, a time that you took a risk that you were afraid to take, but you did so anyhow. And so can you tell us a little bit about what happened and how that changed your life?
I could certainly do that. But first, Emily, your story was amazing. I was looking forward to it. And now that I've heard it, wow, shout out to you. So my experience about risk actually happened 6 years ago when I left my country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it was a scary time because I left for a political reason. Not sure if anybody's aware of it. The Congo is in an unstable political situation, and it's called Democratic Republic of Congo, but it's not so democratic, especially when you try to voice out your opinion or specifically being a woman. So it did not turn out well for me, and all my family and I had to spread out. My mom had to go to Europe with part of my siblings, and I had to come here, joining a cousin that I haven't seen in a while. So it was a little intimidating because you think the United States is a safer place than part of the Congo, but it's also somewhere that I didn't know anybody. I could barely speak the language, and I had almost given up on my dream of going to college because education has always been something that I wanted to do. And part of it was to prove to my mom that I could get an education. It was more sentimental. So I got here knowing deep down in my heart that I might not see my family for a long time, and which turned out to be true. But it wasn't so bad actually. I met great people that I would have never met if I didn't make that move, and learned to adapt to a culture that was totally different than my own, and learn to confront my biases. One of them, moving forward, was actually working for Bangor Savings Bank, which to me was like, oh, Bangor, that seems like a company that is so men focused. So I wasn't sure if I wasn't thinking about diversity. When I thought about Bangor, because I was like, that's a lot to do with men, and I'm not sure if I want to go there. But one of my friends actually encouraged me, and this has turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had. And it turned out that it paid off all those efforts of working, going to school, learning the culture. So it was my way of taking risks and experiencing risk, and it has paid off, and I hope that it will continue to pay off. I have my degree, and I'm going full head on my career, and hopefully I'll make a lot of progress.
That's amazing, Josephine. And that's also, you summarized in about 3 minutes what sounds to me like a series of risks that you took, like that you just summarized, like, oh, and I moved to a country that I didn't know anyone, and I adapted to the culture, and I decided to go to college, and I persisted and I graduated. So have you seen, and it's striking to me that both of you made big moves around 2014, 2015. So can you let us know, have you seen your family? Where are your family now?
So my mom is still in France, and she's actually about to be reunited with the rest of my siblings that couldn't leave the Congo. So that's good news for me. And I'm still here. So I haven't seen them, but just the fact that they can see each other, it's warm enough for me. I was bound to leave the nest at some point. It's just that it's different when you don't get to go back whenever you want. So once you start taking one risk and you realize that, well, it's not so bad. I'm still there. I'm still alive. Then you try and take on the next risk. And it might hurt, but something beautiful might come out of it. And so far, I do not regret any of my choices.
So I want to take a different direction. You know, the seed for me for the topic of today's event about risk was really planted in July when I was listening to a podcast called We Can Do Hard Things. And we can do hard things. And they were
life-changing podcast.
Yes, I hear you from the ether out there. It's a great podcast. And this specific podcast was about our bodies and women being brave with their bodies. And one of the guests on the podcast is a prolific soccer player, Abby Wambach. And she was talking to her wife about the fact that her wife, Glennon Doyle, had some reservation about her body. And that really resonated with me. How women are afraid to put their bodies out there when it comes to being physical, being athletes. We're not supposed to do that. And it's funny because Ainsley had texted me that week that I listened to the podcast and said, hey, want to go do this like lady slide surfing thing at Higgins Beach? And I was like, no, I don't do that. I don't put my body out there to do athletic things for people to see me. And then I thought, well, why not? Emily, I want to throw this one to you.
I knew you were going to.
Well, what does this bring up for you?
Well, the story Corey is setting up with a bit of a softball here is that when I was running for Congress in 2016, there was a lot going on. It was a very busy race. It was a top race in the country. I was challenging a sitting incumbent. And when you run for office, the first thing you do when you run for Congress is you actually pay someone to do a research book. And you're thinking to yourself, sure, about your opponent. No. You hire them to do a research book about you. So you can learn what's all the public information out there about you that your opponent might use in television ads. So, for those of you on the call who are under the age of 41, you maybe had Facebook when you were in college or in high school or Twitter, and maybe you posted things. Facebook didn't exist then. I've only ever been on social media as an elected official or a public official. And so when they did my research book, there wasn't a lot there. Everything online was very appropriate. So I always paid my taxes. I'd never been arrested. I better knock on wood. I'd never, done anything like that. And so all they had was my list of bills that I had supported or voted for in the legislature. And it was a Thursday night, I remember it very well, when a new attack ad came out from my opponent, accusing me of wanting to weigh teenage girls in school in front of their friends. You might remember this ad. It was pretty nasty. It was these three women saying, "How could you, Emily?" Right? For the record, in case you're wondering, I never wanted to weigh teenage girls in school in public in front of their friends. That was not a thing that I would ever do. I'm also somebody who thankfully was raised in a family that said things like beauty is as beauty does, right? And was a very, empowering environment. But also I have a set of genes that means my weight has gone up and down over my life. What the other side didn't know was the week they dropped that ad was just a few weeks after I had surgery in the middle of my campaign to have my thyroid removed. It was during that campaign that I learned I had a thyroid condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. In total, I had gained almost 50 pounds over the prior couple of years. I had my face looked different, my clothes all fit different, but yet there I was on TV doing the thing because I knew why I was doing this work and I felt like I looked just fine, right? Healthy is how you feel. And so when this ad came out, Corey was my campaign manager, and the team started scrambling. How are we going to respond? And I said, I know how we're going to respond. And I literally sat down and I wrote the response ad, and I sent it to Corey. And I said, we had a filming day that weekend. I said, we're going to film this ad. She sent it to the team. They fixed it up to make it actually fit into 30 seconds. And the ad response was me to camera, sitting in a sweater on a couch, saying that weight is personal. And I had been someone who struggled with my weight up and down. I had just been through a year where I had to reckon with my own health and my body making decisions for me, even though I was doing the exercising and doing the eating right. But my weight went up and my energy changed and my body felt like it was not my own. I had had surgery to fix that and started taking medication, and I felt better immediately. But it was this concept that they would accuse me of something that I would never do, first of all, and also how you respond makes a difference. And that's why it comes back to what I talked about at the beginning, which is why you have to know why you do things, right? What is your motivator? What is your why? Your why can change, your why can evolve. But for me, empowering young girls is one of my whys, which is why I did go straight to camera. I didn't ask it to be anything but that, to say that was wrong and it was despicable. And if you actually search Emily Kane weight on Google, it will pop up. There were articles. This ad won awards across the country. And when I first got this job at Emily's List, one of the things I remember most is we had an intern who reached out to me to say that ad, she had been in college someplace else in the country. When she saw that ad, it moved her to want to volunteer more to help women get elected. And the guy who comes when my septic pipe is backed up and frozen in the winter, his name is Jason. He's amazing. He's a Republican. He and his wife voted for me after they saw that ad because his wife works in health and wellness, and they couldn't believe that A, an attack like that would come, and B, they were so impressed with the response. And so was it risky for me to go to camera and talk about my weight? Probably, maybe. I don't know. It didn't feel like it, because I knew why I was doing it. I knew what my motivating factor was. I know that beauty is as beauty does, right? And so for me, I couldn't let that stand. And so the risk was I needed to talk more from a personal perspective. And that's something that I think women are uniquely positioned to do. And it's part of disrupting the patriarchal, sexist institutionalism that we have across business and higher education and in our society, is women speaking up at moments like that. And you see some incredible examples of bravery all across our country, with women running for office, telling stories about having an abortion, telling stories about being the victim of sexual assault, a survivor of sexual assault. You see women telling stories about having breast cancer or taking care of children who are very sick, and what it meant for their careers and what it meant for their lives. And I would argue it's those things, that it's the willingness to talk about that risk and that challenge that makes women better qualified to lead things, to run things, and to serve in office. It's that humanity that we need to see more of from leaders and in our communities that makes us ultimately have long-term changes, not just in our policies and in our laws, but in our hearts and minds, right? I keep this picture of, you can see Kamala Harris over my head, like her or not, it's amazing that every child that is born from now forward, my niece Eleanor, who was born on Inauguration Day, will never know a time that a woman of color was not in the White House. My 3 nephews will never know a time that a Black man was not president of the United States of America, right? And I use those as examples because you have to be willing to accept risk or exposure or hazard to danger, as my definition told us earlier, in order to make that not so risky for the person who comes behind you, right? I mean, you heard Josephine's story. What Josephine has done is, I don't know if I would have the capacity to ever do that, right? I mean, I was fortunate. I never had to leave my family to do this. I did miss a lot of weddings and funerals because I was campaigning, but I didn't have to move across the world or not be with my family. But I bet Josephine knows exactly why she was doing it. And then that's what sustains you. It doesn't exactly feel as risky. So I've gone on too long with this answer, but if you do Google Emily Kane weight, it comes up thanks for the internet, but you'll be able to see the ad after this event.
Well, and Josephine, I'm wondering what comes up for you in this question about bravery in the body, because in your story, like what I heard was you putting your body out there and leaving your home country, then moving, like putting your body in a place that was new to you with people who didn't speak your language, who didn't look like you, and then choosing to join a company after you were wondering like, there aren't a ton of people who look like my body here. I wonder what this is going to be like. And so what comes up for you around this question about women being brave with their bodies?
Well, women being brave with their body. When you were actually talking about the story, Emily, about weight, it was amazing to me to think about it, because as I was sharing with my colleagues the other day, I was telling them back in the Congo, when you are actually skinny, you're not seen as attractive. So growing up, I was very skinny. And I felt very wrong in my body because I was like, no, I'm not meeting the standard of beauty in my country. So coming up here, seeing that things were a little bit different, I was like, wow, the culture shock was just amazing. But being risky with your body, when I think about it, coming here in America, meeting all the people that I could, I'm thinking that it brings up a lot of memory, actually. I'm normally an introverted person. So even like speaking up my mind, which growing up wasn't also ladylike. You actually have to keep quiet, calm, pose, and not talk too much. So being in a culture where you actually can express yourself is a lot of risk on my side because I have to tell my opinion. I have to speak up. And I'm thinking about all the Congolese women who are actually coming here in America, because I'm not the first one who has left their country and seek refuge here in the country of America. But I'm thinking, if I'm the first one who does that, among the first one who does that, I'm proving to them that they can also do that. They can also take the same risk, and it's okay. Because one of the first things that I realized in my community coming here in America was that there was still this stigma attached to women. And many women, aside from the fact of leaving the country, are not willing to take a further risk as of taking a job or exposing themselves to learning a new language. So they stay close hidden in their community, which leads to a lot of abuse. And because you don't know that here actually women are defended. And if you just have the right resources, you might be free in a way that you've never thought you could be, because back home, the culture is totally and completely different, even if we are in 2021. So I hope I answered the question. I know I'm a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I guess I'm going to ask a sort of final question before we transition into breakouts for both of you. Emily, you talked earlier about how it's easier to take risks if you understand the difference that you want to make and that you know what you stand for and what you're saying yes to when you're stepping out and taking that risk. So I'm wondering, and I heard echoes of that in what you were talking about, Josephine, about what fueled you going forward. So in 2 sentences or less, can you summarize either what you stand for, or what you would encourage other people to ask themselves to figure out what's their why, to figure out how to take risks? So I mean, 2 or 3 sentences or less. Emily, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to go first, and I'll try to keep the 3 long sentences. But the first thing would be, for me, the difference right now that I'm focused on making is putting more women with diverse backgrounds and diverse stories in positions of political power. And the difference that makes is you do get better policies and better laws because women bring a different perspective. With the side note, or maybe the subtext of, not all women are the same. We don't have a secret language or a secret code. Women are all different. And so we need lots of women of all ages, all backgrounds, women of color, LGBTQ women. We need women veterans, we need women who are disabled, all running for office in order to have a representative democracy. And so my advice to you is to, as of starting right now, today, this minute, know you are already qualified. The Constitution of the state of Maine gives an age, a geographic location, and a status of citizenship that you have to be to run for the state legislature, for example. The local offices are the same, but that's it. It doesn't say you have to have a law degree. It doesn't even say you have to have gone to USM to be in the state legislature or run for office. It doesn't say you have to have been a banker or owned a business. It doesn't say you have to have been a grandmother. It says your age, your location, and your status, and that's it. So you're already qualified. Let's get on it, ladies. Call me when you're ready.
It's okay if you're a USM alum, though. In fact, we encourage it.
Note taken.
Josephine, how about you?
So my advice would be, don't be ashamed of who you are. Just let other people know who you are. Because I know that for a fact, back home, for a woman to stand out, she needs to portray this this aspect of looking almost like a man and losing her femininity. And my answer to that is that you don't have to change who you are to actually go on and succeed. It's okay to be introverted. It's okay to be a little bit soft-spoken, but at the same time, having a loud voice, anything is good. So don't be ashamed of who you are, put it out there, and it might help someone else actually come out and express themselves and not be ashamed of who they are.
I love that. Let people see who you are. Thank you, Emily and Josephine. And as usual, I feel like we could go on for another hour, but I really want to give each one of us a chance to tell our stories and to talk about risk and to ask questions in small groups. So Josephine, Emily, Ainsley, I'm gonna put you into some breakout rooms as well so that our attendees today can have an opportunity to talk with you. In just a moment, we're going to randomly assign everyone here to a breakout room where a member of USM's Alumni Engagement Council is going to lead you in a group discussion around risk. So I really want to thank members of our Alumni Engagement Council, Sarah Rogers, Mary Elizabeth Sims, Tara Now, Alyssa Lewis, and of course, Council President Kate Beaver. They're going to lead us all in conversation in our small sessions.
So we want to get just a snippet with the time that we have left of some highlights of what you heard in your groups. And I think that our group was, the group that I was in was breakout room 1. So can we have a representative from my room to give a highlight or two of what you heard or what inspired you? Not afraid to call someone out. I know your names.
I can. Sorry,
Awesome.
This is Sue. The things we talked about were how sometimes risk is something that's forced upon you, where you would make some decisions or some life-changing events because of a situation that maybe you didn't have control over. So maybe, if something hadn't happened a certain way, you wouldn't have taken that risk. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. So.
Yeah, and that's coming from Sue Salisbury, who is a member of the state legislature now because of a risk that she took, and also Dean Softly was in our group and talking about her history in the public eye. So now, and that was Mary Elizabeth's group, who did a great job at taking a risk and facilitating. Now, can we hear from Alyssa's group?
I'll go.
Great.
Okay, so I put something in the chat, but there were very interesting stories. So number one, everybody has a story, period. And if we just keep that in mind, I think that we're going to be more open to who people are and more accepting. One of the things that I heard was that women need support. We always have, we always will, and especially from each other, period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's great. Thanks. And we're so glad that you're joining us from Vermont, Elaine.
Here.
So now can we hear from Tara's group?
Hi, I will share on behalf of our group. So two of the kind of main themes that we talked about, one, that taking a risk is an opportunity to free yourself from maybe the fear that's trapping you. And so that kind of, it might come with, it might be scary, it might come with fear, but it's a way to like empower yourself. And that by not taking a risk, sometimes you might be shutting yourself off from opportunities that you don't even know you have. And then we also talked a bit about that taking risks at different life stages need to be considered and weighed differently. And number of members of our group talked about maybe taking more risks when they were younger versus when they're older, and having to consider the outcomes of those risks differently, and that not all risks are necessarily good. And so it's something that we all have to consider when we make these decisions.
Thanks, Diana. And can we hear from Kate's group?
Mary, do you want to share what you shared at the end?
We started out with the quote, "Only a person who risks is free." And I think following up on what the prior group said, the risks have rewards, and that I think that it's those rewards that set you free, even if the risk is a scary thing. But we also need support, and we need support from other women, because my example was the women who took a risk in the two very notable Supreme Court hearings, one 30 years ago and one a year ago. And those women took huge risks and paid big consequences for it.
Yeah.
And I think we, other women, need to support them and support other women who've been willing to speak out, the Monica Lewinskys and other people, especially in the last 20 years, who've been willing to take a risk with their body and their careers often, and that we need to be there to support them and encourage them to take those risks, because the rewards, as Emily said, if you're true to yourself, the rewards are worth the risk.
That's great. That's so inspiring to hear what the different flavors of our conversations. I think our last group is Sarah, the group that Sarah facilitated.
Yes, ma'am. Josephine, you want to give a little bit of feedback from our group?
Sure, we had an amazing testimony. The common theme that I took out was amazing women who took on risk to actually go back to school. That was amazing. And also another one was also taking a career path that was not necessarily one that you would consider safe, like leaving a safe workplace, like secure with good revenue, and switching to something that you actually love. That one is a big risk, and I actually love women who shared it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Josephine. And I'm going to turn it back over to Corey. I know that Dr. Glenn and a number of others are having to jump off to their 9 o'clocks. So Corey, will you take us out?
I will. I'm going to wrap this puppy up. I do want to shout out to Kate Holcomb in our group, who was talking about regret and the regret that comes from not taking that risk that you've always thought about. That was important. And also I saw in the chat that Alyssa Lewis and her group had asked, what is the alternative? And I loved that too. Like, what happens if we don't take a risk, and to be thinking about that, what is the alternative? Things staying the same. Is that palatable for us? So anyway, thank you all. I wish we had another hour to have these continuing conversations, but I really want to thank Josephine. I want to thank Emily. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank members of the Humane System and USM leadership who are here with us today. We asked Emily and Josephine to send us resources or tools that have inspired or helped them in their journey of risk. And we will be collecting all of those podcasts, books, poems, other things, and sending them out to all of you in our post-event email. So be on the lookout for that. Also, Linda Verrill, who is a USM alumna and president of Broadreach Communications, encouraged us to share a recent McKinsey study called Women in the Workplace. It's got some really insightful information about how women are setting a new standard for leadership in the workplace. I know intimately. We'll email you a link to that study as well. Before we wrap up, we've got one more important item on the agenda, and that is the final raffle. We've got a great swag bag from our season event sponsor, Bangor Savings Bank. Again, thank you, Bangor Savings Bank, for being our season sponsor. It includes a Bangor Savings Bank water bottle, hat, blanket, sunglasses, earbuds case, the book Here for Generations, the story of Bangor Savings Bank. And also, we're going to pair that Bangor Savings Bank gift up with the Husky Snuggle Pack. So maybe I could ask Blair to do one more thing and show us what a Husky Snuggle Pack is. Blair, are you there? Can she see it? Can we see her? Oh, there she is. Oh yeah, so look at that. We've got the yellow Champ the Husky snuggle blanket. There is room for 2 under that blanket. And then we have the 2 University of Southern Maine coffee tumblers or whatever else you want to put in there, because they fit a lot of things. So let me look for the winner's name. The winner of the BSB gift basket and the Husky Snuggle Pack is Kayla Frank. Kayla Frank, you are our winner. So congratulations. We'll get that out to you. I want to thank you all for joining our event, and stay tuned for our USM Women in Leadership event in February, which we call Galentine's. And fingers crossed, we will be together in person at long last in February. Thanks, Emily and Josephine, and thanks to all of you members of the Alumni Engagement Council who facilitated. We'll see you all soon.